Call the meeting to order. Ask you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is one nation, indivisible. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the following items. Item A, approve the City Council work session September 5th. City Council regular meeting September 5th. City Council work session September 19th. City Council regular meeting September 19th. Item B, authorize the mayor and city clerk treasurer to execute a state of Minnesota voting operations technology and election resources voter account county municipality agreement between the city of Winston and McLeod County, authorizing McLeod County to expand the allocated funds for the authorized purposes on behalf of the city of Winston. Item C, authorize the city administrator and city clerk treasurer to execute addendum number 1 to work order number 11, the professional services contract between the city of Winston and Bolton and Mink Incorporated to prepare specifications and provide bidding documents, assistance, review, and award for a snow removal equipment purchase for the Winston Municipal Airport 101, or 10D. Item D, authorize the city administrator to approve a quote from Bergen Incorporated to complete infrared patching on various manholes and water valves located in the city of Winston for an amount not to exceed $9,600. Item E, authorize the city administrator to approve a quote from Alpha Tactical for purchase of 3 active shooter kits, ballistic plates, 3 helmets, and 1 shield bunker for the Winston Police Department for an amount not to exceed $19,000. Item F, approve a lighted parade sponsored by the Winston Area Chamber of Commerce in conjunction with the Winston Winter Festival on designated streets in the city of Winston, as approved by the Chief of Police on Saturday, December 2nd of this year. Item G, grant a hayride permit to the Winston Area Chamber of Commerce in conjunction with the Winston Winter Festival for Saturday, December 2nd, 2023 from 11 o'clock until 2 p.m. with the designated route as submitted to the Chief of Police. Item H, adopt Resolution R-23-44 to accept a contribution from gambling proceeds from the Winston Volunteer Fire Department Relief Association in the amount of $15,000 to be dedicated toward Winston Volunteer Fire Department's capital improvement plan. Item I, adopt Resolution R-23-45 to accept a donation for the Winston Volunteer Fire Department in the amount of $200 to be dedicated towards the Winston Volunteer Fire Department Capital Improvement Fund. Item J, schedule a special closed city council meeting for Tuesday, December 19th, 2023 at 4 p.m. in the Volmer Room at Winston City Hall to conduct a 6-month performance review for Mr. Neil Schlegel, City Administrator. Item K, appoint Mr. William Casey to the position of volunteer firefighter with the Winston Volunteer Fire Department, contingent upon passing a criminal background check, pre-employment physical, and a drug and alcohol test. Item I, approve the claims list from November 8th, 2023. That's the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to accept or reject.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have next the public hearing, and I'll open that up right after, I'll open it up right now. Just give you a few guidelines that we follow, and each time we have a public hearing for those of you who haven't been part of it. First of all, we thank everybody for attending the city council meeting tonight to take part in the public hearing. Purpose of the public hearing this evening is to obtain comments in regard to the text amendments to the animal control ordinance. Participants who plan to speak have been requested to sign in prior to the public hearing. Those who have not yet signed in and prior to the beginning of the hearing may speak after those that signed up in advance. Each speaker will be asked to provide his or her name and address and is limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is granted by the mayor. We ask that you speak into the microphone at the desk so viewers at home can hear you. Citizens are urged to be polite and quiet as comments are made. Everyone is asked to abide by these guidelines so that the public hearing process can proceed smoothly and all who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so. Another item I'd like to add is that we will take all the comments and then we'll close the public hearing, and at that point, the council will go into discussion over the subject matter, and then we will decide if we oppose or approve it, and that'll be the end of the meeting, the open hearing. Then we'll move on to the next item. So we'll open the public hearing. Do you want to give a review of where we are, Neil, or what we're about to undertake? People start coming up.
Sure. So over the past few months, we have been discussing whether or not to allow chickens within the city. Over that time, we have had a group or a person, individual, whichever way we look at it, that has made this request, ended up raising some funds in order to go through the proper channels, to go through this ordinance change or possible ordinance change, text change, gone through the planning commission. At the planning commission, now they have talked through, and when you read through here, it has all of the different pieces that would go along with adding chickens to our city, and they have decided to move it to this point forward and leave it to you guys here to decide whether or not we should change the text in that ordinance.
Okay, so you're already up there. You want to give us your name and address and have
Hi.
at it?
Good evening, Angela Stobner, 685 6th Street, North Lot 15. So yeah, I've started coming in June, and we're finally here. We made it to the Planning Commission. That is exciting news. We have a lot of support, no matter what some people think. The majority, I really feel like, don't mind, or they are pro, as long as there are certain requirements. I was also told then to come up with an ordinance that I thought would be good, and then they actually didn't really want to hear it because they said, you guys said, oh, there's going to be so many changes. So we went to the Planning Commission a couple times, and now I'm back here again, and I have the ordinance in front of me that your lawyer guy has come up with.
Planning zoning.
Planning and zoning guy, okay. So I just want to, talk about a few things that I've highlighted that maybe I know that you have the ability to tweak it, even though it's already in place, you still have the ability to tweak it. So, I think one of them was just there's lots of benefits being self-sustainable, lots of cities and countries and everywhere. I mean, there's only pros, I feel like, to being more self-sustainable and having chickens. I mean, not like all the cats in town that are running around. It's not going to happen because there's so much scrutiny about it. So as long as you go by, I don't see what the big deal is really. Some things I've highlighted: keeping of chickens. I assume you all have your copy of the ordinance. So from the beginning, one of the things that I really feel like was important was being able to have a Cooper structure that you can move around. And in here it states that they only want it in the backyard. 20 feet from the property line, 40 feet from the neighbor's house. There are other ordinances that there's a couple out there that are 6 feet. So I think it would be appropriate to change it from 20 to like 15, at least 10 to 15, and then maybe at least one side yard, a side yard and a backyard, because as long as it's still closer to your dwelling than anybody other else's dwelling, and then, they can graze a little. That's kind of the point of it too. And then using some of the compost. I don't know if you want to make requirement about, I know the waste is supposed to be all gone. I know people are worried maybe about the smell. That could happen, but they really don't smell that much as long as you keep up with cleaning it. And you can use a little bit in your own garden, for example. That was one of the things when I was walking around. I have 148 signatures. Walking around and talking to people, that was one of the highlights, was that your compost. I'm not saying all of it. Obviously, we don't want to smell up everything, but if there was some certain legality, bucket amount you would want to put to that, just so people could put it in their garden, I think that would be appropriate. It's kind of part of being self-sustainable too. I understand that there's no permit, or that you have to get a permit, but that there's not an amount. I was thinking, maybe $20 to $50. At the most, 50. At 20, because then, people are complaining about the city not having money and making money. So if you charge somebody $20, then you can make a little bit of money and help pay for every occasional thing where maybe somebody will call and complain about, oh my gosh, somebody's chicken actually got out, because I really don't think that's going to happen that often. And I feel like the number of chickens should be 5 or 6, not 4.
It's 5 in here.
5? Because on here it says 4. Okay. 5. That sounds good. They only lay 1 a day, and what if you have a family? 5 or 6. I think.
So just so you're aware, the fee schedule won't happen tonight either way. So that goes at a later time.
Right, that would be when somebody actually wanted to.
No, you'd pay at a later time if you're going to do chickens, but the fee schedule itself, we won't set until January. It'll be set in place for January. So it won't happen at this meeting is what I'm saying. It won't happen in this ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's with all of them. All of our fees go on that same schedule. I don't know if you have other key points, Angela, but we're nearing on your 3 minutes here.
Oh, well, there was a couple of things. Part of being self-sustainable would be, I agree, maybe people don't want to do the butchering outside, but inside, if you had your own basement, that might be acceptable, so you don't have to pay somebody else to do it. It's not that hard. And there was the notice where anybody at any time could just come to your house, and that's pretty acceptable, but it's not like a daycare where you're taking care of people. So, is there a notice? Would they give you a day? They were coming the day before, or coming tomorrow to check you out or whatever?
Most likely, unless it was something that was, really egregious.
And then the one, what was this? The city. So it says they have 60 days to approve an application. Is that 60 days? So if it goes into effect January, when would this actually go into effect? Because then could people start putting in place so they could start when they want to start?
Yeah, most likely would not go into effect until January. We'd have to publish it and change all of those pieces. So I think January is probably accurate when it would go into effect if it's approved tonight.
And then one other thing, I'm not fully understanding, unless otherwise specified by the city. So your permit becomes null and void after 1 year, but then you can still redo it after 15 days or something.
Yes, basically be your yearly permit.
I guess that's.
So when we would permit it, it would be, okay, if you haven't had any issues, you would just pay for your permit again. And
Like a dog license. You pay
Correct.
$10 every January for.
Yep, same premise. Yep.
And then, unless I missed it, is there also like a penalty for if somebody gets 3-5 strikes, and then what? Oh, I think I did read that. I just don't remember where it is.
Yes, that would be, we would rescind the permit at some point. That's the,
After how
that's the
many
penalty.
issues?
I don't remember exactly what that is, but it is in here somewhere.
And then they would.
Basically, it would, honestly, what it would be is if you don't come to compliance within that time period. So whoever would be, if they're not in compliance, they don't get 3-4 strikes. You're not in compliance after 14 days. I give you this much time or 30 days, whatever that is.
All right.
And if you don't fix it by then, you don't get chickens anymore. That's the way it would go.
Okay.
Okay, then we should
And
probably,
then though, there's one more thing. You don't have to actually ask your neighbor. Sorry, right? Because I know there was some talk about that at the planning commission, and I don't think I saw it in here, but I was kind of rushing a little bit to double check. Because that's more of a personality versus,
That's not in here.
okay. That's all then, I think, for now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next? Anybody, did you sign up? Who's on the list, sign-up list?
Ashley McCarthy, 331 First Street South.
This is a first for me, sorry. So Ashley McCarthy, 331 First Street South, right here in town. I am on the for side, but not looking to do it myself, if that makes sense. I know there's a lot of concerns with more pests coming in. The bird food would be stored the same as you would store any wild bird food. So in terms of rodents, there would not be any increase and actually possibly a decrease in the fact that chickens eat rats, mice, snakes. So it might help with that. They do eat meat naturally. Obviously, we won't be feeding them that, but if one so happens to come into a coop, it will be taken care of on it in and of itself. I foresee a positive in the city in the fact of you're going to have the application fees for the permits. You're going to have an increase in people now needing to build coops. That's going to bring money into local contractors and local businesses for such. They might want to then add a fence on the exterior within their zoning laws. That's going to bring in permit for you guys and increase local business as well in that statement. Those are just kind of some of my pros that I have seen. I know they're worried about them getting out. Well, if you have a proper structure, that won't happen. And if it's part of the permit is to have a proper structure, well then that shouldn't be an issue. And if it is, well then they're in violation.
And then they'll have
Everybody that wants to do this the right way has been fighting for this for a long time. And so they're not going to jeopardize. Unfortunately, we can't speak to everybody. We have your good apples and we have your bad apples. And regardless of what the rules or the laws or the legislation states, the bad apples are going to find their way in. And it's just going to be a time and place for them. Just like the neighbors, animals, whether or not they abide by law. That's up to them. And I know there's a concern about noise with hens. Now, we don't want roosters. That's evident. We want a small number of hens. 5 is perfect. That's great. Or less. And they aren't going to be up at night. They fall asleep at night. They don't make noise at night. They're in their coop. It's dark. They're asleep. When the sun goes down at this time of night, they're in the coop before dusk. It's a natural cycle for them. So it's not going to be a displacement in noise. It's not going to be a concern. And, during the day, yes, they're going to coo and they're going to walk a little bit, but it's no different than the neighbor's dog barking at a leaf that rolls by. Or, like, I have a really loud pickup because it's old and rusty. It's no more of a disruption than that. Motorcycle, same thing. So we're not going to impede on that because it's going to be abiding by kind of the natural law of time. We're not going to exceed that. But those are just some of my pros coming from somebody who isn't even looking to get a permit at this time. It's just voicing for the people who would like to do it themselves.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who's next, Raquel?
Pam Peaky, outside of city residents, but
You just signed up. Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else want to comment before we close the public hearing? Okay, look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing has come to a close. I asked the council members individually to give their 2 cents on their thoughts before we put it to a vote. We'll start with, even if we go alphabetically, it's still going to be the same way it is. So Jeff, you're up.
I don't have an issue with it, and I commend Angela for going through this whole process and getting to this point. I wish more community members would be proactive like you have been. It didn't take me long to think about this, but far be it from me to be chicken about chickens. I would be for this.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
How do you follow that? I also have no issues with it at all. To me, it's fine. We have a decent set of regulations that it's pretty simple. You follow it, you can have them. You don't, then it's going to be revoked. And I think everybody that has invested time in this is going to do the right thing. So I'm for it.
I have no issue with the ordinance as written. I, like these two, believe that those who have invested their time have done a job well done. Those who want chickens can have their chickens. If they don't follow the rules, it's pretty cut and dry is what's going to happen. So, no, I don't have any issues.
Looks like I'm going to be the odd man out. First of all, I want to thank Angela for all the work and time and effort she put in. I also want to thank the Plan Commission. I think they did a fantastic job writing up the rules and regulations. And I don't have a problem with the rules and regulations, but I do have some concerns. In the new ordinance, the old part ordinance also, it's in the old ordinance right now. There's a lot of definitions. Talks about the definition of an animal, then domestic, non-domestic, and now we are going to and talk about farm animals, and now we're going to put another section in talking about specifically chickens, allowing chickens. Chickens right now are not permitted by our current ordinance, and that has not changed in the next thing that we're going to vote on. So what we're adding is we've got 125 line items that were added to this ordinance. My biggest concern with all this is, how are we going to implement it? So when we talk about an administrative permit required, whose job is that? Whose responsibility is that? I know we have the Plan Commission chair here. We have Jesse, who's part of the conversation, and also Neil. I don't know. I didn't go to any of those meetings. We haven't discussed how this is going to work. Under that administrative permit, I'm also concerned was it's in accordance with this section shall not be transferred to another owner upon the sale or change in occupancy to the property to which it is issued and shall not be transferred to another property. How would we know? How would the city know if the property was changed? I mean, somebody's got to watch it, regulate it. Maximum number of chickens. Who checks? When and how often? The keeping of roosters is prohibited. Who checks? When and how often? Chicken coop, exercise area specifications. Who's going to go there and check? Would this require a building permit? Just asking, not suggesting. The area, again, interior floor space of a coop shall provide a minimum of 2 square feet for each chicken. Who checks, when and how often? Coop shall not exceed 24 square feet. Again, who checks? Coop exterior, use of wood or proven durability for exterior use such as cedar, redwood, or cypress. Who's going down and checking that? How often? Winterized, same issues. What's acceptable? Doesn't say. This says has to be winterized. Enclosed run, again, talked about square foot. Who's checking it? How often? Same with the vermin permit, access, prevented access. Also, the coop run shall be located only when the certain, all these items, run shall be set back. The coop run shall not be located within a certain drainage and utility. All good items, not discussing that. Have no problem with any of that. But every one of these items, who's checking it, how often? Administrative and enforcement, this is the big one for me. When and why would the city inspect? I mean, if the chicken coop is run for a permit is issued in accordance with the section, who's going to go down and make sure that it is? We're just going to take the word of a piece of paper that says these are all the things I've done. The other thing too is I've heard that we have chickens currently in town and had them in town for quite some time. If we're not enforcing what we already currently have, how in the heck are we going to enforce something that we're adding more rules and regulations to? So that's my big issue. If I had answers to all those, I'd probably be in favor of it, but right now I'm not. And I'm only one vote. So you can kind of see where this is going. But I'm going to make sure that you understand where I'm coming from. So, any other questions before somebody wants to make a motion?
You know, I appreciate your feelings on it. I think neighbors will police each other, right? I really do.
What if you have a bad neighbor?
Well, I mean, what I mean by that is they're going to tell us if somebody's not in compliance, and then it will be up to us to.
What if you have a neighbor who wants to mind his own business and doesn't like it?
Well, I mean,
I'm just saying.
so people complain about dogs all the time, and they don't necessarily need to. When the police check on the barking dog or whatever, you don't necessarily need to tell them who complained, right? So it would be the same thing. If a neighbor complained about chickens and you had to go enforce it, you wouldn't necessarily tell them I complained about it.
No, he could get that information.
I just think we have the police have enough on their plate right now.
Right.
I would rather have them enforce safety of the community, crime. This is not a crime, and it shouldn't be treated as a crime. That's where I'm coming from.
Well, I honestly don't see more than a handful of people actually doing this. What I think is probably going to end up happening is those who think they want it now are going to get a chicken coop, they're going to get their 5 chickens, and they're going to realize it's a lot more work than what they thought, and they're going to get out of it.
I guess I still don't feel comfortable with the fact that I asked a lot of questions. I didn't hear any answer on how we're going to do it.
I was wondering if they were rhetorical or if you were actually looking for
I'm
an
serious.
answer.
I was
Well,
asking.
Yeah. So to start with, how many people do you think are actually going to do it?
I don't care.
Well, I think that's important.
I think if we spend any amount of time, or we put an ordinance into effect and spend any amount of time to try to enforce it, why? Who's doing it?
Who enforces blight? Who enforces pet stuff right now?
That's our police department.
Okay.
I don't think that's where it belongs. Just
I literally think it less than a handful of people, and you would hope that they would all comply. And if you have 1 out of 5 that doesn't comply, that's a less complaints than the police probably get on barking dogs, right? You probably get a lot of those every year, don't you? Yeah, so I just don't think this is going to be a really time-consuming issue for compliance.
All I'm doing is I'm just stating my opinion. I know I'm outvoted. I'm fine with that. Just a little concerned. So I'm looking for a motion if there is one.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance O-23-06, an ordinance providing text amendments to Chapter 8, Section 3 of the Winstead Municipal Code of the City of Winstead, Minnesota, with relation to animal control and chickens in residential districts.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the next item is,
Summary ordinance.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, so now, since Mr. Oleg is missing, if we have made this change, and we have to now publish this ordinance in the paper before it can go into effect, we would like to, as city staff, publish a summary ordinance if possible, because that will save the city money. And anybody who wants a full ordinance can come later, but we need 4/5 of the council vote on that.
is that a motion?
You would all
So-
need to vote yes on that for summary publication.
I would make a motion to do a summary publication on ordinance number 0-23-06.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
You guys want to leave, that's fine. We have a little bit of the meeting left. Police going to give us updates. So that's the department report. Justin? Wake up.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me. Last time I was here was April 4th, is when I did my last city council report and presented the annual report. Since then, what I tend to do with these reports is it's pretty quick. I just hit on the things other than, enforcement, and other day-to-day operations. So these are a little outside of what we normally do. But in April, officers attended annual use of force training, OC spray. So that's your chemical irritant, baton, your ASP. Taser training, less than lethal. We carry bean bay rounds in our shotguns. We no longer carry lethal rounds in our shotguns. We did that training with the McLeod County Sheriff's Office. Assisted the Chamber of Commerce with their annual Easter egg hunt at Hanlon Park. Conducted a walkthrough at ATHC and provided guidance on emergency preparedness. It was a good opportunity to walk through that facility. We've been in there many times, but got to meet and talk about planning. Officer attended the Women's Expo at the Blue Note. I believe that was done with the fire department, in conjunction with the fire department. Assisted McLeod County correctional staff in fingerprinting students at the Winstead Elementary School and Holy Trinity School. Daniel Moonen began his employment as a full-time officer with our agency in April and began his FTO process with me. Officers participated in the city administrator hiring luncheon. Now we move to May. We held the annual liquor license forum down here at City Hall, so all alcohol license holders have to attend that forum or have a representative attend the forum. Officers attended medical refresher training, EMR, EMT. EMR is an emergency medical responder, and an EMT is an emergency medical technician. Myself and Officer Lammers are EMTs. Currently, we have Officer Mooner and Officer Couturier. They're EMRs. Officers participated in firearms qualifications with the McLeod County Sheriff's Office. Annual bicycle rodeo is held at the Winstead Elementary School, and we get great donations for that. And we thank our community for those donations, because the last couple of years, I believe we've actually had enough prizes to give every kid a prize or close to it. Those prizes are raffle helmets, bikes, bike water bottles, bike locks, reflectors, battery reflectors. It's a great event. Officer Lammers puts that together, and we get a lot of kids that come. Also attending WinSoc planning meetings. Moving to June, officers attended all staff meetings at City Hall and participated in the accident review meeting. I believe myself and Officer Lammers, as well as other city staff, were part of that. We review, and I know Raquel talks about this in her update, but we review accidents that city personnel have had that quarter up to that point. In June, Officer Moonen began his solo patrol, so that means he successfully completed his field training. We assisted the McLeod County Sheriff's Office providing security for Woodstock. Attended the summer, and then we started attending summer festival planning meetings. In July, Lucas Couturier began his employment as a full-time police officer with our agency. He began his FTO process with me. He then moved to Officer Lammers for the remaining 2 phases. There's 4 phases in FTO. The 4th phase, I'm currently in the 4th phase. That's when you're on your own, subject to rides. Attended League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust webinar regarding legislative law changes, including the marijuana legalization and PERA changes. In August, Officer Moonen participated in a Girl Scout event at Hanlon Park, where he explained his duties and equipment of the police department to the Girl Scouts. I believe they're just known as the Scouts now. Assisted with traffic control at the Tour de Tonka bicycle event that came through Winston. That was moved, I believe, just this year due to the detour. I believe that's why it was moved. So I don't know if that'll be coming back through again next year, but a lot of bikers. It's a 100-mile run. Assisted with providing security for the summer festival, the McLeod County Sheriff's Office conducted an annual audit of our evidence room, and we passed. That's a good thing. So what they do, we started this a couple years back, and we hadn't done it years prior, but Officer Lammers, I believe 4 years ago, we sent him to school to become an evidence technician. Essentially what that means is that evidence room, and rightfully so, is, as I'm a supervisor, that should be maintained by somebody else. I'm ultimately responsible for that evidence room, but all the evidence in it is maintained by Officer Lammers. What we do is we have a detective from the Sheriff's Office come in. I believe he pulls 10 cases, just randomly goes through our system, pulls 10 cases, and then Officer Lammers has to provide the evidence for those 10 cases. And all the evidence was there. That's a good thing. September, and we have a lot of evidence in the evidence room. I will open it up if anyone wants to see it. There's a lot of evidence in that room. I don't even think Neil and Raquel have seen it, but there's a lot of evidence.
Dispose of it.
We can dispose of it due to the statute of limitations when it comes to a case disposition. So some evidence can be closed after, let's say somebody's been found guilty and the statute of limitations for appealing has elapsed. Once that has elapsed, then you can dispose of it. There's certain evidence that can never be, anything death related cannot be ever, just, you can't get rid of it. You got to maintain it. That's a good question. We actually, there's no secret that there's been changes to marijuana legislation, which also part of that legislation, there is going to be, I'll probably get the terms wrong, but expungement of records. And there's current cases that might be waiting out there, waiting for court, that would be legal now, if it happened now, but when it happened. So we're trying to work through that right now, because if we have those cases, I'm going to make a recommendation to our prosecutor to dismiss those cases now, because it doesn't pay to spend the money on the prosecution of something that, so Officer Lammers, I've tasked him with going through our marijuana to see what cases are sitting there for that we can maybe dismiss. Those folks out there, get their hopes up.
If you confiscate a gun,
Yeah.
does that get destroyed?
Yep, so it depends. So we recently, last week or 2 weeks ago, on a case, we had to take 6 guns out of a residence. And when I say take, I use that word. We have to take firearms based on state statute, but we're not taking them. We're taking them into safekeeping. So in this situation, we're still retaining them. And part of our fee schedule, there's a $1 per day per gun fee in there. I have never charged. Right or wrong, I'm just telling you, I have never charged that, because generally what we do, let's say, unfortunately, I have to take Joe Smith guns, right? I have to take his 6 guns. What I tell them is they can be released to any any adult that can legally possess those firearms. So what we try to do is turn them around as soon as possible. Now, let's say it's a gun related to a crime, so it is actual evidence. Then yes, we retain that. If it's determined that it can be released at a later point. So a lot of times a gun crime is a person illegally possesses a firearm. So somebody that's been convicted of a felony in the past, they have a firearm. We take that. That's evidence. Well, we can still release that once that has gone through court to somebody else of maybe their dad or their uncle, or, we can return that later. Now, let's say it was actually used in a homicide or attempted homicide. That then is part of a death that would have to be maintained for forever. Suicides. Unfortunately, we have had those more than we wanted in the last year. Those firearms can also be returned to family if they want it. I can see why they wouldn't, but in those cases, then yes, they can be destroyed. That's a long answer, but there's a lot of different variables that go into that.
So like a domestic dispute, if you knew there were guns in the house, you might take them away from
So
them?
per state law, with the new red flag laws, they are required to surrender those firearms within 24 hours. So that actually is what happened in our most recent one, where they have to contact us to surrender those firearms. So then what I do, or we do, the police department, take them, and then we work with them right away to try to get somebody to take custody of them, because we don't want the firearms. They take up a lot of space. They truly do, and firearms cost a lot of money. We have the racking and the capabilities of keeping them, but not long-term storage. That just isn't feasible for us. Any more questions on the guns or the evidence? So in September, last thing in September, officers attended the Towards Zero Death Coalition. So it used to be Safe and Sober. If you remember hearing about Safe and Sober, it's now TZD through the Department of Public Safety. So I attend those quarterly meetings at the county level. In October, Officer Moonen attended firearms instructor training at the Sherburne County Sheriff's Office. So he is actually he is a certified firearms instructor now. Officer Couturier attended rifle certification at the Sherburne County Sheriff's Office. They're sort of a hub for a lot of statewide trainings. They have a nice facility up there, so they host a lot of trainings. Officers attended annual safety training here at the City Hall, put together by Raquel and her staff. Attended budget workshop. Officer Couturier began his solo patrol, so in the last 10 days, Officer Couturier is now on his own. The City Council renewed our body worn camera program with Axon. That program is very important to this police department, this community, my belief. The camera has been a great tool for everyone, not just the police department. We assisted a couple Fridays ago with the business trick or treat event. I don't know if anyone's reported the council on that, but numbers I heard were over 600 again, I believe. And a lot of kids. It was cold and windy, but it was nice to see our businesses that participated in it. It's a great event. It helps when other cities don't sort of maybe lack the courage to hold it and they cancel. So then those community kids come here. That's good. November, just now, we resumed our joint powers agreement with Lester Prairie Police Department for weekend and holiday coverage. If you recall, we've been doing that for, I believe this is our 3rd year. We did start it earlier this year. We had to postpone is probably a better term for it, because we didn't have the staffing, but now we're up to our normal staffing in Lester Prairie as well. So we've started that again. So you will see Lester Prairie police officers at certain times handling calls in Winsted, and at certain times we'll have Winsted officers covering calls in Lester Prairie. We've done it for, like I said, 3 years now. So if you have any questions regarding that, let me know. Give me a call or stop in. Just in my this is taking longer than you probably wanted me to talk, but we've been averaging 1 to 2 drug overdoses a year, which results in quite a lengthy and large investigations. And with that, this year just happened to be we hired 2 new officers, so they got thrown to the fire pretty quick in regards to those. So good learning experiences for them, but I just want the council to know and the community to know that we do investigate those matters completely and fully. They're time consuming, but at the same time, it is taxing on the officers too. So, but they've done a great job. Scooters, I just thought I'd mention it. We're getting out of that time of year, but they're motorized scooters. I think we've all seen them around town. I just wanted to mention to the community, please use caution. It's usually kids that are on them, and the kids are flying on them. Currently, we do not regulate them through ordinance, but I think common sense and safety goes a long ways, and just to try to remind our kids to, obey the stop signs, keep it down, the speed, because they fly, and us as motorists, keep an eye out for them because they come out all over the place. No one wants an accident with anyone. And then lastly, the winter parking went into effect November 1st through March 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. We've never had an issue. As long as you call the police department, let us know that you're going to park on the road, we'll give you permission. Otherwise, there is a citation that is issued. And then 320-485-2600 to call for permission. Like I said, we do not say no. If it's snowing a lot, and it tends to happen the last couple of years, Christmas time, a lot of people are out. All we ask is that you move the vehicle, when the plows come through, and then you can park on the street again. We just ask for you to call. So, any questions regarding?
I have 2 comments. One is thank you and your police, the rest of your officers. You guys are fantastic, keeping the public safe. You guys put up with a lot of stuff. Second comment is I have a neighbor who's really loves goat cheese. I hope he doesn't want to come to the council and get the ordinance changed.
Well, that may happen, but you can anticipate me asking the council for an additional officer to enforce these items.
Compliance officer.
I thank you for your service as well. I am still uncomfortable that you know what kind of vehicle I drive. I'm just going to state that for the record.
But just remember, you know where I live.
And you know where I live too.
Well,
So.
We have a great community. We do, and I've said this before, and I don't just say things to say things because that would do nothing for anyone. But our community does look out for each other. You mentioned the neighbors policing themselves. That I'm sure happens in all small towns, and I grew up in a small town close to here, but it really doesn't compare to Winsted. Winsted's a special town. It really is, and I'm happy to work here. Glad to work here. But the thing is we encourage people. Because if you look at I don't know if you see our monthly totals, a lot of the suspicious activities, suspicious vehicles, that's not us. That's the community calling that in. And 8 times out of 10, it's nothing. Well, tonight, just before I came down here, we ended up taking the call. It was in the county with 235th and Zion Avenue. The county resident called because we have good rapport. He lives close to the community. Said, hey, this is suspicious. Look what's going on. I asked the officer to go there and check on it. He go in and check on it. Turns in to be something. That's how it works. And that's we can't do that. It's not us. It's the community. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
We've come to the city administrator, the open forum section tonight. If anybody wants to address the council, step up and state your name and address and yell at those guys. Looks like nobody's interested in talking, so we'll go on to the city administrator update and announcements.
Yeah, I had the business trick or treat, which Justin took from me, so that was one of my announcements. But that was reported by the library. I think at 672 children came through, and I did bring my youngest through, and it was good. And Justin and Jim were out directing traffic, and everything went really smooth. And like Justin said, it was really great to see how many of our businesses were out there. The HLWW school vote passed. The referendum passed last night. Unofficial results were, I'm not going to say them, but it unofficially passed. It was by about 300 votes, I believe. And we got a thank you from McLeod for Tomorrow. As you know, I am a member going through that right now through their cohort, and we hosted them here in our Vollmer room, and they're very impressed with that, and they were very impressed with our city. We did a tour of AZZ and Millburn, and Tom got to talk about Winstock and the creation of Winstock. So it was really good to be able to show off our town to a bunch of other people in the county. That's all.
Look for a motion to adjourn.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.